The dust from the stagecoach settled on Olivia Montgomery's skirts as she stood alone in the center of Redemption Creek, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, the other clutching a worn carpet bag containing everything she owned in the world. The year was 1878, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the single dirt road that cut through the small frontier town nestled in the Colorado Territory. Nowhere to go, no one expecting her, and 5 months pregnant with a child whose father had abandoned them. This was not how she had imagined her life would unfold. Across the street, Owen Hart leaned against the hitching post outside the general store, his weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes. He watched the slender woman with copper hair as she gazed helplessly at the departing stagecoach. There was something in the way she stood straight-backed, despite her obvious exhaustion, that caught his attention. The town of Redemption Creek hadn't seen a new face in months, especially not one belonging to a woman in her condition traveling alone. Olivia felt the weight of eyes upon her and turned to find a tall man watching her from across the dusty street. She quickly looked away, suddenly aware of how she must appear travel-worn and visibly with child, but lacking a wedding band. She'd faced enough judgment back east. She didn't need it from strangers in this God-forsaken place that was supposed to be her fresh start. "Miss, you needing some assistance?" The man's voice carried across the street as he pushed himself away from the post and started toward her. Olivia stiffened. "I'm quite all right, thank you," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Owen stopped a respectful distance away. He wasn't what Olivia had expected from a frontier man. Tall and broad-shouldered, yes, but there was a gentleness in his blue eyes that contrasted with his rugged appearance. His sandy brown hair curled slightly where it met his collar, and his face, though tanned and lined from years under the sun, wasn't unkind. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look all right," he said. "Stagecoach doesn't come back through for another week. You got somewhere to stay?" Olivia hesitated. The truth was, she didn't. The letter from her cousin Martha had promised work and lodging at the town's only hotel, but when she'd inquired at the desk upon arrival, the sour-faced proprietor had looked her up and down, his gaze lingering on her midsection, before informing her that the position had been filled weeks ago. No, they didn't need any help, and no, they didn't have any rooms available for a woman in her situation. "I'll manage," she said, lifting her chin. Owen's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes, not pity, which she would have despised, but understanding. "Redemption Creek ain't always kind to newcomers," he said quietly, "especially those arriving alone. I'm not looking for kindness, Mr. Hart. Owen Hart, Mr. Hart. I simply need work and a roof over my head until I can make other arrangements." Owen nodded thoughtfully. "Mrs. Wilson over at the boarding house might have a room. As for work—" He paused, considering something. "My ranch could use an extra pair of hands for cooking and keeping house. Previous housekeeper left to get married last month." Olivia regarded him suspiciously. "And you'd hire a woman in my condition, just like that?" "Your condition ain't my business, madam. Your cooking skills, on the other hand." Despite herself, Olivia felt the corners of her mouth twitch. "I'll have you know I managed a household of 12 back in Boston." "Is that where you're from then?" "Boston," she nodded cautiously. "Olivia Montgomery," she said, offering her name like a small concession. "Well, Miss Montgomery, my offer stands. 3 meals a day, your own room in the main house, and fair wages. Ranch is about 3 miles outside town." He gestured to a wagon parked down the street. "I'm heading back once I finish my errands. You're welcome to think on it while I do." Olivia weighed her options, which were painfully few. This stranger could be dangerous, but staying in town with no prospects seemed equally perilous. Something about Owen Hart's straightforward manner reassured her. He hadn't asked about her past or the father of her child. He hadn't looked at her with disgust or made assumptions. "I don't need to think on it," she said finally. "I accept your offer, Mr. Hart." If he was surprised by her quick decision, he didn't show it. "Fair enough. I'll be at the wagon in 30 minutes. True to his word, Owen appeared at the wagon precisely half an hour later, loading several parcels into the back before helping Olivia up onto the seat. The journey to the Hart Ranch was mostly silent, save for Owen occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing bits of information about the area. Olivia was grateful for the lack of interrogation, using the time to observe her new employer and the landscape. The Hart Ranch came into view as they crested a small hill, a sprawling property with a sturdy two-story house, a large barn, and several outbuildings. It wasn't grand by Eastern standards, but it was substantial for the frontier. A few cowboys worked with cattle in a distant pasture, and smoke rose from the main house chimney. "It's not much compared to Boston, I reckon," Owen said, noticing her appraisal. "It's bigger than I expected," Olivia admitted. "My father started with nothing but 50 acres and 10 head of cattle 20 years ago. Now we've got over 1,000 acres and 300 head. There was no boasting in his voice, just simple pride. "He passed 3 years back. It's just me running things now." As they pulled up to the house, a young boy of about 12 came running out to greet them, followed by an older man with a pronounced limp. "Uncle Owen, did you bring candy?" the boy called out. Owen chuckled. "Hello to you too, Jesse." "Yes, there might be some peppermint sticks in one of those parcels." He turned to Olivia. "My nephew, Jesse. His father, my brother, is working cattle in Wyoming Territory. Jesse is staying with me this year." Then, nodding to the older man, "And that's Frank Miller, my foreman." Frank eyed Olivia with undisguised curiosity, but said nothing beyond a polite "Madam." "Miss Montgomery is our new housekeeper," Owen explained, helping her down from the wagon. "She'll be taking over Mrs. Gunderson's old room." If either Frank or Jesse found anything unusual about a pregnant woman being hired as housekeeper, they kept it to themselves. Jesse was more interested in his promised candy, while Frank merely nodded and went to help unload the wagon. The house was clean but Spartan, a large kitchen with a massive wood-burning stove, a dining room with a table big enough for 10, a sitting room with bookshelves that surprised Olivia with their contents, and upstairs, several bedrooms. Owen showed her to a small but comfortable room at the back of the house, overlooking a kitchen garden gone slightly wild. "Mrs. Gunderson started that garden," Owen explained, following her gaze. "Nobody's had time to tend it properly since she left." Olivia moved to the window, already mentally cataloging what could be salvaged and what needed replanting. "I can manage it," she said. "I enjoy gardening." Owen seemed pleased. "Good. Well, I'll leave you to get settled. Supper's usually at 6. There's 4 ranch hands that eat with us, plus Frank and Jesse. Think you can manage tonight, or would you rather start fresh tomorrow?" Olivia straightened her shoulders. "I can manage tonight, Mr. Hart." After Owen left, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by how quickly her circumstances had changed. That morning, she'd been on a stagecoach heading west with dwindling funds and no real plan beyond a cousin's vague promise. Now she had a job, a room, and something that almost felt like security. It seemed too good to be true, which made her wary. Men didn't typically offer positions to unmarried pregnant women without expecting something in return. Yet Owen Hart hadn't given her any reason to distrust him. He'd been respectful and kept a proper distance. Perhaps he was simply a decent man in need of a housekeeper. Or perhaps his motives would reveal themselves in time. Either way, she had a meal to prepare for 7 hungry men. Pushing her concerns aside, Olivia unpacked her few belongings, changed into a fresh apron, and made her way downstairs to assess the kitchen supplies. The coming weeks established a routine that Olivia found surprisingly comfortable. She rose early to prepare breakfast for Owen, Jesse, and the ranch hands. The men would head out to work while she cleaned the house, tended the garden, and prepared lunch and dinner. Owen was a fair employer who never questioned her when she needed rest, or moved more slowly on days when the baby was particularly active. Jesse, initially shy around her, gradually warmed up, especially when he discovered Olivia new stories he hadn't heard before. In the evenings, when the men gathered on the porch to smoke and talk, Jesse would often sit with Olivia in the kitchen as she prepared dough for the next morning's bread, listening rapt as she told tales from books she'd read or places she'd been. It was during one such evening, about a month after her arrival, that Olivia found herself sharing more than she intended. "Miss Olivia," Jesse began, tracing patterns in the flour dusting the table. "Where's your husband?" The question caught her off guard. She'd been careful not to mention her past, and no one at the ranch had asked directly. "I don't have a husband, Jesse." The boy looked confused, his eyes darting to her belly, which had grown more prominent. "But not all babies have fathers who stick around," she said gently, deciding that honesty, simply put, was best. Mine decided he didn't want to be a father after all. Jesse considered this. "That's not right," he said finally, with the absolute moral certainty of youth. "My pa says a man takes responsibility for his actions." "Your father sounds like a wise man," Olivia replied, grateful that the boy hadn't reacted with disgust or judgment. "Uncle Owen says the same thing. He says a man's word is his bond, and if he can't keep it, he ain't worth the dirt under his boots." Olivia smiled. "Your uncle is also a wise man. Is that why you came out west, because of the baby's father?" Olivia's hands stilled in the dough. "Partly," she admitted. "People in Boston, they have certain ideas about women in my situation. It became difficult to stay." Jesse nodded solemnly. "People here have ideas too. Mrs. Thornton from church was saying things about you in town last week, but Uncle Owen told her to mind her own business." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "Your uncle defended me." "Sure did. Said you were the best housekeeper this ranch has ever seen and that your past was between you and God." Jesse grinned. Mrs. Thornton got all red-faced and huffy. It was something to see. Olivia wasn't sure how to feel about Owen defending her honor. On one hand, she was grateful. On the other, she didn't want to be a burden or cause problems for him in town. Later that night, after Jesse had gone to bed, Olivia found Owen on the porch, smoking his evening pipe and staring out at the darkened landscape. "Mr. Hart," she said, stepping outside. "I wanted to thank you." He turned, pipe in hand. "For what, Miss Montgomery? Jesse mentioned that you defended me in town. You didn't have to do that." Owen's expression remained impassive in the dim light. "No thanks necessary. What Mrs. Thornton was suggesting wasn't right." "Nevertheless, I appreciate it." She hesitated. "I wouldn't want my presence here to cause difficulties for you." Owen tapped his pipe against the porch railing. "Miss Montgomery, do you know why this town is called Redemption Creek?" She shook her head. "Story goes that back in '49, a group of settlers got stranded here during a brutal winter. They'd been heading to California for the gold rush but misjudged the season. Food ran out, tensions rose. Things got ugly. Then one morning, after the worst blizzard, they found the creek had thawed just enough to reveal a bed of freshwater mussels. Saved them all from starving." He paused. "Those settlers believed they'd been given a second chance, a redemption, if you will." Olivia considered his words. Are you saying Redemption Creek should live up to its name? I'm saying everybody deserves a second chance, Miss Montgomery, including you. He met her eyes directly. I don't care what brought you here or whose child you're carrying. What matters is who you choose to be now. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. Thank you, she said softly. Owen nodded, then changed the subject. The Founders' Day Festival is next weekend. Town tradition. There'll be a dance, contest, that sort of thing. Jessie has been looking forward to it all year. It sounds lovely. You should come with us. Olivia instinctively placed a hand on her belly. I don't think that would be appropriate, Mr. Hart. Why not? You're part of this household now. You know why not? People will talk. Owen's jaw tightened slightly. Let them talk. Jessie wants you there, and frankly, so do I. Before Olivia could respond, a sharp pain gripped her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch the porch railing. Owen was at her side instantly. What is it? The baby, she nodded, breathing through the discomfort. It's nothing to worry about. The doctor in Denver called them practice contractions. They've been happening on and off. You sure? Should I send for Doc Wilson? No, really, I'm fine. The pain subsided and she straightened. See, all better. Owen didn't look convinced. Maybe you should sit down a spell. Mr. Hart, I've been managing these for weeks. I know my body. He held up his hands in surrender. Of course, I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. An awkward silence fell between them. Olivia was acutely aware of how close Owen stood, of the concern in his eyes that seemed more personal than that of an employer for his housekeeper. I should get some rest, she said finally. Good night, Mr. Hart. Good night, Miss Montgomery. As she climbed the stairs to her room, Olivia tried to make sense of the conflicting emotions Owen Hart stirred in her. She'd come to Redemption Creek determined to rely on no one but herself. Yet here she was, drawing comfort from a man she barely knew. It was dangerous territory, especially given her current circumstances. She couldn't afford to mistake kindness for something more. Not again. The Founders' Day Festival arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp air, golden sunlight, and trees beginning to show hints of yellow and red. Despite her reservations, Olivia found herself riding into town with Owen and Jessie, dressed in her best gown, which Owen had insisted on having altered by the town's seamstress to accommodate her growing figure. Redemption Creek had transformed for the occasion. The main street was decorated with banners and bunting. Stalls sold everything from pies to handcrafted goods, and a wooden platform had been erected for dancing. Children ran about playing games while adults socialized and competed in various contests. As they walked through the festivities, Olivia was painfully aware of the looks and whispers that followed them. Owen, however, seemed completely unbothered, proudly introducing her to those who approached. Miss Montgomery, our housekeeper, he would say, as if daring anyone to comment further. Some responded with polite nods, others with barely concealed disapproval. A few, mostly the younger women or those who lived on outlying farms and ranches, were genuinely friendly, asking Olivia about her journey west and her impressions of Colorado. Jessie quickly disappeared with a group of boys his age, leaving Olivia and Owen to wander the festival together. They watched the horseshoe competition, sampled Mrs. Peterson's famous apple cider, and admired the quilts on display. You should enter next year, Owen said, nodding toward a particularly intricate quilt. Jessie mentioned you've been working on one for the baby. Olivia looked at him in surprise. You think I'll still be here next year? Owen met her gaze steadily. That's entirely up to you, Miss Montgomery. But the position is yours for as long as you want it. Before she could respond, the sound of raised voices caught their attention. A group of men had gathered near the saloon, and at the center was a tall, dark-haired stranger arguing with the town sheriff. "What's happening?" Olivia asked. Owen's expression darkened. "Trouble. That's Jake Blackwood. Used to run with a rough gang out of Kansas before he decided to try his hand at legitimate ranching. Bought the old Peterson place last spring." The argument seemed to intensify, with Blackwood gesturing angrily while the sheriff tried to calm him down. "Maybe we should move on," Olivia suggested, uncomfortable with the brewing confrontation. Owen nodded, taking her elbow to guide her away. They had only gone a few steps when a loud voice called out behind them. "Well, look at that. Owen Hart's got himself a woman at last." Owen stiffened but kept walking, his hand tightening slightly on Olivia's arm. "Ignore him," he muttered, but Blackwood wasn't done. "And in a family way, too. Moving mighty fast, ain't you, Hart? Or is it even yours?" Owen stopped abruptly, and Olivia felt him take a deep breath. "Keep going," he told her quietly. "Find Jesse and wait by the wagon." "Owen, don't, it'll be fine. Go on now." Reluctantly, Olivia continued walking, her heart pounding. She glanced back to see Owen confronting Blackwood, their conversation too low to hear but the tension visible in their postures. She found Jesse at a penny toss booth and pulled him away despite his protests. "Your uncle wants us to wait by the wagon," she explained, keeping her voice calm for the boy's sake. "Is it because of Mr. Blackwood? Pa says he's bad news." "I'm sure everything's fine," Olivia assured him, though she wasn't convinced herself. They waited by the wagon for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes before Owen appeared, his expression grim but composed. "Everything all right?" Olivia asked anxiously. "Fine," Owen replied shortly. "Jesse, go fetch our pie from the judging table. Looks like we're heading home early." Once Jesse was out of earshot, Olivia turned to Owen. "What happened?" "Nothing worth repeating," he said, but his clenched jaw told a different story. "Owen." It was the first time she'd used his given name. "Please." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Blackwood was drunk and looking for trouble. Said some things about you that no decent man would repeat. I informed him that he was mistaken about your position in my household and suggested he mind his own business. And that was all." Owen's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. "I might have also suggested that if he ever spoke about you that way again, he'd be eating through a straw for a month." "Owen." Olivia was torn between horror and a strange sort of gratification. No one had ever defended her honor so fiercely before. "Don't worry, Sheriff Daniels stepped in before things got out of hand." Owen's expression softened. "I'm sorry the day was ruined." "It wasn't," Olivia said honestly. "I was having a wonderful time until—" "Me too." Something in his voice made her look up, and the intensity in his eyes caught her breath. For a moment, it seemed he might say more, but Jesse returned, proudly carrying their pie, and the moment passed. The ride back to the ranch was subdued, with Jesse falling asleep against Olivia's shoulder halfway home. When they arrived, Owen carried the boy to bed while Olivia prepared a light supper, her mind replaying the day's events. She was setting the table when Owen returned to the kitchen, his shirt sleeves rolled up and hair damp from washing up. "Jesse is out cold," he reported. "Probably won't wake till morning." "He had an exciting day," Olivia replied, placing a plate of cold chicken and bread on the table. They ate in companionable silence for a while before Owen spoke. "I owe you an apology, Olivia." She looked up in surprise at his use of her first name. "For what?" "I insisted you come to the festival despite your reservations, and you ended up in an uncomfortable situation because of it. You couldn't have known what would happen." "Maybe not, but I should have been more considerate of your feelings." He pushed his plate away, his food barely touched. "The truth is, I wanted to show you off a bit. Selfish of me." "Show me off?" Olivia wasn't sure she understood. Owen met her gaze directly. You've brought something to this house that's been missing for a long time. Jesse is happier than I've seen him since his mother passed. The men actually look forward to coming in for meals instead of just shoveling food in their mouths and hurrying back out. And I. He paused. Well, let's just say the house feels more like a home with you in it. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. That's very kind of you to say. It's not kindness, it's the truth. Owen leaned forward slightly. I know your situation is complicated and I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you've made a difference here, to all of us. The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. For so long she'd felt like a burden, a problem to be solved or hidden away. But here, in this remote ranch house with this quiet, steadfast man, she felt valued for who she was, not despite her circumstances but including them. Thank you, she said softly. That means more than you know. Something shifted between them that night, a barrier lowered, a trust established. Over the following weeks, as autumn deepened toward winter and Olivia's time grew nearer, their relationship evolved in small but significant ways. Owen began taking his evening pipe on the porch while Olivia sat nearby mending or knitting for the baby. They talked of books they'd read, places they'd been, dreams they'd had. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about losing his parents, about his hopes for Jesse. She shared stories of her childhood in Boston, her love of teaching before scandal forced her resignation, her passion for gardening. She didn't tell him about Jonathan Pierce, the charming bank manager's son who had promised marriage, then disappeared when she told him she was with child. She didn't speak of her parents' cold dismissal or the visit to relatives they'd arranged to hide her shame. Some wounds were still too raw, even as new healing began. Winter came early that year, with the first snow falling in late October. The ranch hands worked furiously to ensure the cattle had adequate shelter and feed, while Olivia prepared the house for the cold months ahead. She put up preserves from the garden harvest, mended quilts and blankets, and stocked the pantry with provisions ordered from town. It was during one such supply run that Owen encountered Jonathan Pierce. The meeting was pure chance. Pierce had apparently followed Olivia's trail west after having second thoughts, or more likely, after his father had insisted he do the right thing to avoid scandal. He'd been making inquiries in towns across Colorado and had finally arrived in Redemption Creek. Owen was loading supplies into the wagon when a well-dressed Easterner approached him outside the general store. "Excuse me, sir," the man said, his Boston accent immediately catching Owen's attention. "I'm looking for a woman named Olivia Montgomery. I've been told she might be working at your ranch." Owen studied the stranger carefully. Something in the man's manner, too polished, too practiced, put him on alert. "Who's asking?" "Jonathan Pierce. I'm an old acquaintance from Boston." The name hit Owen like a physical blow. This was the father of Olivia's child, the man who had abandoned her to face disgrace alone. He'd imagined him countless times over the past months, always as some faceless villain. The real Jonathan Pierce was disappointingly ordinary, handsome in a soft way, well-dressed but unremarkable. "Miss Montgomery is indeed employed at my ranch," Owen said, his tone neutral despite the anger building inside him. "May I ask the nature of your business with her?" Pierce straightened his already immaculate jacket. "That's a private matter between Miss Montgomery and myself. If you could direct me to your property—" "Miss Montgomery has built a new life here," Owen interrupted. "A good life. She doesn't need ghosts from her past showing up unannounced." Understanding dawned on Pierce's face. "I see she's told you about our unfortunate situation. I've come to rectify that, actually, to offer marriage and restore her good name." Owen's hands clenched involuntarily at his sides. "Bit late for that, wouldn't you say?" Better late than never, surely. Pierce's smile didn't reach his eyes. After all, a woman in her condition needs a husband, especially with a child on the way. What she needs, Owen said carefully, is someone who won't abandon her when things get difficult, someone she can rely on. And you think that's you? Pierce's smile turned condescending. A rough frontier rancher. Olivia comes from one of Boston's finest families. She belongs in civilization, not some backwater territory. Seems to me that civilization didn't treat her too kindly when she needed it most. Owen stepped closer. Miss Montgomery will decide what's best for herself and her child. If she wants to see you, that's her choice. But I won't have you ambushing her. Pierce's expression hardened. You can't keep me from seeing her. No, but I can make sure she's prepared for your arrival. Owen loaded the last of his supplies. I'll tell her you're in town. If she wants to see you, she'll let you know. This is absurd. I've traveled 2,000 miles, and she's had to rebuild her entire life because of you, Owen cut in, his patience wearing thin. The least you can do is respect her enough to approach on her terms. Pierce looked like he might argue further, but something in Owen's stance made him reconsider. Fine. I'm staying at the hotel. Please inform Olivia that I wish to speak with her at her earliest convenience. Owen nodded curtly and climbed into his wagon, his mind racing. How would Olivia react to this news? Would she welcome Pierce back, grateful for the legitimacy he offered her child? The thought created a hollow feeling in Owen's chest, but he pushed it aside. This wasn't about him or his growing feelings for Olivia. This was about what was best for her and the baby. When he returned to the ranch, he found Olivia in the kitchen, humming softly as she kneaded bread dough. Her pregnancy was well advanced now, her movements slower but no less graceful. The sight of her, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the window, made his heart ache with what he might lose. "You're back early," she said, looking up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" Owen removed his hat, turning it nervously in his hands. "I met someone in town today, Jonathan Pierce." The color drained from Olivia's face. The dough fell from her suddenly limp fingers as she gripped the table edge for support. "Jonathan, here, how?" Owen moved quickly to her side, guiding her to a chair. "He's been looking for you. Said he wants to rectify the situation and offer marriage." Olivia sat very still, her eyes fixed on some distant point. "After all this time," she whispered, "after everything." "You don't have to see him," Owen said gently. "I made that clear to him, but I thought you should know he's here." She looked up at him then, her eyes searching his face. "What do you think I should do?" The question caught him off guard. "It's not my place to please, Owen. I value your opinion." He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I think you should consider what's best for you and your child. Pierce can offer you respectability, a name for your baby. Those aren't small things. And is that what you think I should do? Marry him?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Owen's heart urged him to tell her no, to confess the feelings that had been growing in him day by day. But his conscience wouldn't let him stand between her and what might be best for her child. "I think," he said finally, "that you deserve someone who loves you enough to stand by you through everything life throws at you, whether that's Pierce or someone else. Only you can decide." Olivia nodded slowly, her hands absently cradling her belly. "When I first discovered I was with child, I thought my life was over. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd dreamed of gone in an instant. Jonathan promised we'd marry quietly, that no one would know the child had been conceived out of wedlock." Her voice hardened. "Then he disappeared. No letter, no explanation, just gone." "I'm sorry," Owen said softly. "I don't know what he wants now, but I do know I'm not the same woman he left behind in Boston." She met Owen's gaze directly. "I'm stronger now, and I've learned the difference between empty promises and true integrity." Something in her words gave Owen hope, but he was careful not to show it. "Whatever you decide, you have a home here for as long as you want it. You and the child." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll see him. I need to know why he's really here." Owen nodded, respecting her decision even as anxiety gnawed at him. "I can take you to town tomorrow if you'd like." "Yes, I think that would be best. Get it over with." That night, Owen slept poorly, his dreams troubled by images of Olivia returning to Boston on Pierce's arm, taking her unborn child, a child Owen had already begun to care for as his own, away from Redemption Creek forever. Morning dawned clear and cold, the landscape transformed by a fresh dusting of snow. Olivia emerged from her room dressed in her best gown, her copper hair neatly arranged, her expression resolute. Owen helped her into the wagon, tucking blankets around her against the chill, and they set off for town in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The hotel lobby was deserted when they arrived except for the clerk, who directed them to the small dining room where Jonathan Pierce sat alone, nursing a cup of coffee. He rose when they entered, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of Olivia's prominent belly. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying across the empty room, "you look, well, Jonathan." Her reply was cool but composed. "This is Owen Hart, my employer." Pierce nodded curtly in Owen's direction before turning his attention back to Olivia. "I was hoping we might speak privately." Olivia glanced at Owen, who understood the silent request. "I'll be right outside if you need me," he said, giving Pierce a warning look before stepping out. The next hour was the longest of Owen's life. He paced the hotel porch, smoked 2 cigars, and nearly wore a path in the floorboards. When the dining room door finally opened, Olivia emerged alone, her face unreadable. "Everything all right?" Owen asked, immediately at her side. She nodded. "Can we go home now?" "Home." The word sent a surge of hope through him. "Of course." They were halfway back to the ranch before Olivia spoke again. "He came because his father made him," she said, breaking the silence. "The scandal followed the family even after I left. His father threatened to disinherit him if he didn't make things right." Owen's hands tightened on the reins. "So his concern wasn't for you or the child?" "Oh, he dressed it up nicely, talked about duty and responsibility, even claimed he'd missed me. But when I asked if he loved me, if he was truly prepared to be a father..." She shook her head. "He couldn't even look me in the eye." "I'm sorry, Olivia." She turned to him then, a small smile playing at her lips. "Don't be. I realized something important today. I don't need Jonathan Pierce or his reluctant proposal. I don't need the approval of Boston society or anyone else. What I need, what my child needs, is someone genuine. Someone whose words match their actions." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding, a possibility. Owen wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly his free hand was covering hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. "I told him no," Olivia said softly. "I told him I'd found a place where I belong." Owen's heart soared, but before he could respond, Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. "What is it?" "Another practice contraction." She shook her head, her face contorted in pain. "No, this is different. Stronger." "Owen, I think the baby's coming." Owen's mind raced. They were still a mile from the ranch, and the town doctor was in the opposite direction. "Can you hold on until we get home?" Olivia nodded, breathing heavily. "I think so. First babies usually take their time." Owen snapped the reins, urging the horses to a faster pace. By the time they reached the ranch, Olivia was in the grip of regular contractions. Frank and two of the hands helped her into the house while Owen sent Jesse riding for the midwife who lived on a neighboring farm. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. The midwife arrived promptly, taking charge with quiet efficiency. She banished the men from the house except for Owen, who stubbornly refused to leave, instead pacing the hallway outside Olivia's room, wincing at each cry of pain that filtered through the door. "First babies are always the hardest," the midwife assured him when she emerged to fetch more hot water. "But Miss Montgomery is strong. She's doing well." As the night wore on, Owen found himself praying more fervently than he had since his father's death. He prayed for Olivia's safety, for the health of her child, and selfishly, for a future that included them both in his life. Just before dawn, a new sound broke the tension, the thin, indignant wail of a newborn. Owen froze, his heart pounding as the crying grew stronger. A few minutes later, the midwife opened the door, her tired face wreathed in smiles. "You can come in now," she said. "Mother and daughter are waiting for you, daughter." Olivia had a little girl. Owen entered the room hesitantly, overwhelmed by the sight that greeted him. Olivia sat propped against pillows, her face exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up as he approached, her eyes shining. "Owen, meet Elena Grace Montgomery." He moved closer, peering at the small, red face nestled against Olivia's breast. The baby had a tuft of dark hair and tiny features that already hinted at her mother's delicate beauty. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Would you like to hold her?" Before he could answer, Olivia was carefully transferring the bundle into his arms. Elena weighed almost nothing, yet the responsibility of holding her felt enormous. As Owen gazed down at the newborn, something shifted inside him, a fierce, protective love that took his breath away. "Hello, Elena," he murmured. "Welcome to the world." The baby squirmed slightly, her tiny hand escaping the blanket to wrap around his finger with surprising strength. Owen looked up to find Olivia watching them, tears streaming down her face. "What is it?" he asked, alarmed. "Are you in pain?" She shook her head, smiling through her tears. "I'm just happy. I never thought I'd see this, my daughter safe in the arms of a good man." The midwife tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone with the newborn. Owen gently returned Elena to her mother's arms, then sat on the edge of the bed, his heart too full for words. "I know this isn't the right time," he said finally. "You need rest, and there's so much ahead with the baby. But I need to tell you something, Olivia." She looked up at him expectantly. "When you first came here, I hired you because you needed work and I needed a housekeeper. Simple as that. I didn't expect." He paused, gathering his courage. "I didn't expect to fall in love with you. With your strength, your kindness, your determination. I didn't expect to lie awake at night thinking about your smile or the way you hum when you're kneading bread." Olivia's eyes widened, but she remained silent, letting him continue. "I know Elena isn't my child by birth, but if you'll let me, I'd like to be her father in every way that matters. And I'd like to be your husband if you'll have me." He took her hand gently. "I ain't scared of your past, Olivia. I'm just hoping to be part of your future." For a long moment, Olivia said nothing, and Owen feared he'd misread everything, that his declaration was unwelcome. Then she smiled, a smile so radiant it seemed to light the entire room. "Owen Hart," she said softly, "I believe that's the most beautiful proposal a woman has ever received." "Is that a yes?" In answer, she leaned forward, careful not to disturb the sleeping infant, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was brief but full of promise, and when they parted, Owen felt as though his heart might burst with joy. "That's definitely a yes," Olivia whispered. Spring came early to Redemption Creek that year, bringing with it new beginnings. The ranch blossomed under Olivia's care, the kitchen garden expanding to include vegetables and herbs, flowers bordering the walkways. Alina grew strong and healthy, adored by everyone on the ranch, especially Jesse, who took his role as honorary big brother very seriously. Owen and Olivia were married in April, a simple ceremony in the town church, followed by a celebration at the ranch that brought together everyone from miles around. Even Mrs. Thornton came, her previous judgment softened by the obvious devotion between the newlyweds and Owen's public declaration that in adopting Alina as his own, he'd received the greatest gift a man could ask for. Jonathan Pierce left Redemption Creek the day after Olivia refused his proposal, never to return. His departure left no void in Olivia's life, which was now fuller than she'd ever imagined possible. She had a husband who cherished her, a daughter who thrived, and a home where her past was acknowledged but not defined by. On warm evenings, after Alina was tucked into her cradle and the day's work was done, Owen and Olivia would sit on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Sometimes they talked about the future additions to the house, more children someday, plans for the ranch. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him, content in the knowledge that they had found in each other exactly what they needed. One such evening, as summer approached and Alina neared her 6-month birthday, Owen broached a subject they hadn't discussed in some time. "I was thinking about the Founders' Day festival," he said, stroking Olivia's hair. "Thought maybe we could enter Alina in the prettiest baby contest." Olivia laughed. "She'd win, of course, but are you sure you want to subject our daughter to such vanity at a young age? Just trying to give the folks of Redemption Creek a chance to see what real beauty looks like," he replied with a grin. "Besides, I like showing off my family. The word still brought a rush of gratitude every time Olivia heard it. "Speaking of family," she said, taking Owen's hand and placing it on her abdomen, "we might have another entry for next year's contest." Owen stared at her for a moment before understanding dawned. "Are you saying?" She nodded, her eyes shining. "Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday. We're having a baby, Owen. Alina will have a little brother or sister by winter." The joy that spread across Owen's face was something Olivia knew she would remember forever. He gathered her in his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "Both of you, all of you." "And we love you," she replied, thinking of how far she'd come from that dusty day when she'd stood alone in the center of Redemption Creek with nothing but uncertainty ahead. Later that night, as Owen slept beside her and Alina dreamed in her cradle across the room, Olivia thought about the strange and wonderful path that had led her here. She had come west seeking only refuge and found instead a home, a family, and a love that accepted all of her past, present, and future. Outside, the stars shone over Redemption Creek, the same stars that had guided countless others seeking new beginnings in this vast, unforgiving, beautiful land. Olivia sent up a silent prayer of gratitude as she drifted towards sleep, secure in the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be in the arms of a man who had looked at her most vulnerable moment and said, with perfect sincerity, "I ain't scared of your past." As the years passed, the Hart family flourished. Owen and Olivia welcomed 4 more children after Alina twin boys named James and William, followed by daughters Sarah and little Margaret. The ranch expanded, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Jesse grew into a fine young man who eventually took over the neighboring property, starting a family of his own, but remaining close to the uncle and aunt who had shaped his formative years. Alina never questioned her place in the family. Owen had legally adopted her shortly after his marriage to Olivia, and he had been true to his word. He was her father in every way that mattered. As she grew, she showed a natural talent for horseback riding and ranch management that made Owen burst with pride. The story of their beginning became something of a legend in Redemption Creek, how a proud rancher had defied convention to marry an unwed mother, raising her child as his own. Some versions painted it as a scandal, others as a romance, but those who knew Owen and Olivia saw it for what it was: a testament to the power of second chances and the courage to build something beautiful from difficult beginnings. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen presented Olivia with a locket containing miniature portraits of all their children. Inside the lid, he had inscribed the words he had said to her that fateful day: "I ain't scared of your past." Olivia, her copper hair now threaded with silver, had tears in her eyes as she fastened it around her neck. "It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago, all at once," she said, watching their grown and nearly grown children laughing together across the yard. Owen took her hand, his touch still sending the same thrill through her after all these years. "Best decision I ever made was hiring a stubborn, pregnant Easterner as my housekeeper. And the best decision I ever made was accepting," she replied, leaning into his embrace. Together they had built a legacy of love, acceptance, and family that would endure long after they were gone, a legacy that began with a simple statement of faith from a cowboy to a woman who had thought her life was over, only to discover it was just beginning.